like the basic idea is very cool of like picking up a sword and like saying magic words, and then you've transformed into a bigger, buffer person who can like save the day is very appealing. And like then I don't think it's going to shock people that I also really love Shazam.
No,
I
really?
really, do you think? Yeah. So it's all the idea of magical transformation is very interesting to me. I love that stuff.
Welcome back to the Comics Cube, everyone. I am with Josie Campbell, one of the writer of the new Champion of Shazam, among other things. But we will get to that in a bit. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing this morning for you, this evening for me?
I'm doing all right. I have one question that I ask everyone who comes on the show.
Mhm.
I will change it a little bit because of your background. Why do you love animation and why do you love comics?
So I love animation and comics because I'm a big old nerd and I love anything that it has superpowers or dragons or magical swords, anything that has a lot of imagination in it. And so as somebody who grew up on like manga and anime a lot, and then also like all of the sort of DC and Marvel stuff, just the fact that like animation is the home of so many great like superheroes and so many great like shows where they do cool magic or they do go to space and it looks so phenomenal, it looks so fantastic. Yeah, that's what I'm interested in. That's what I love. So basically living in imagination and escaping to other worlds, that's what I'm into. So and that's exactly what animation and comics does every day.
What was the spark? Do you remember the first kind of
Mm.
property maybe that you fell in love with?
So when I was really little, like we had a VHS copy, which is going to very much date me,
I had a
of the
Betamax copy.
oh yeah, there we go. Yeah, so there we go. Wasn't quite Betamax, but it was getting close. I had a VHS of The Last Unicorn, which the animated movie, which I loved to death, and I would watch it. I watched it so much I wore out the tape. And then like when we go to Blockbuster to rent a video, again we're dating ourselves here. I would always pick whatever animated thing looks so good. But it was like definitely I think The Last Unicorn was the first thing. Like I was really little and I just draw my own anime unicorn eyes on everything. And I was just so interested in it. It looked so cool. And that kind of, I think that kind of sparked it all off for me.
When did you realize this was what you wanted to do?
So funnily enough, I realized animation specifically and comics specifically, like sort of like college and right out of college. I originally went to college thinking that I'd do theater, that I'd like I would be like playwriting and directing because I had done that in high school, and had been in like little community theater plays. And then I got to high school or got to college, and I was part of a comedy troupe where we were making little like claymation videos. And I was like, oh no, this is fun. This is great. And I was still like thinking throughout college, it's like, okay, well, I like TV writing too. So maybe like I'll work on a sitcom. And then I got hired at Warner Brothers like years later, but in animation, and instantly just was like, oh yeah, no, this is the home for me. This is where I belong. These are my people.
Did you uh so what was the first thing where you realized that okay, you wanted to write that particular property?
Mm. It was like I like again, it was like as a kid, I would watch things and then write little like sketches about them or like little like write little like scenes that would like have characters of things that I liked in them. So like it kind of was from like the get-go. I was just like, I'd watch like a Wallace and Gromit short and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna take my clay and I'm gonna make my own Wallace and Gromit short with my like giant ass like VHS like recorder that my family had. But I think what really sparks sort of my imagination and is tied into what I'm doing right now, which is I was a big DC fan as a kid. So like Wonder Woman, Superman especially, oh my god, like Supergirl, like all of that stuff. I was like, oh, I want more Superman. I wanted like what if I had a cape and I was flying around? Like it would be so cool, we could hang out. So yeah, it's I think all of that stuff again was just sort of like childhood, young, that I never grew out of.
Same.
Yay.
As a creative person, who would you say your
hmm
influences are?
mm. Um, so I would say, because like everything I do is like I love action adventure, I love YA stuff, but like I also love comedy a lot. Like everything I do always has jokes in it, even if it's very serious and like the world is ending, like somebody's gonna crack a joke. So honestly, I think sort of some of my influences are from those like comics and stuff I was reading when I was really little and like as a young person. So like honestly, like Rumiko Takahashi's like Ranma Half, like
Yeah.
huge. Oh my god, huge influence on like especially like the way she'd pace out her like action in her comics. Like I thought it was hilarious. I loved it so much. I bought every single volume. I befriended somebody in like middle school who had the rest of the volumes sort of just to be able to read them. Like we would just read her manga library, but like her sense of humor and her sense of timing and like the sense of like zany madcap world building, like I think is a was a big influence on me. I also think one of the other influences on me was honestly like John Byrne's run on both Sensational She-Hulk and then Sensational She-Hulk and then Man of Steel, Superman, because you know, I loved Sensational She-Hulk for a lot of the same reasons. Like I loved the like fourth wall breaking. You know, it blew my mind as a child. I was like, she's speaking to me. She's threatening my X-Men comics. And so like I loved her sass and her like her fashion. Like I just loved everything that Byrne had put together in that book. And it was like something that like I really was like, you know, again, drawing my own versions of this or being like, okay, if I made a superhero, like obviously she'd be dressed in the best clothes and then she'd be like doing all of this stuff. And then also sort of on the Superman side of it, like the Man of Steel run in the 90s and then you know that kept going with you know John and Wheezy and Dan Jurgens and turned into Death of Superman. There's so much heart there and like that really touched me and that's really something that like I try to approximate to like you know there's jokes there's action but like if I could get half as like that idea of like you know caring so much about Mom Pa Kent about caring so much about the Daily Planet in this world like the really good conflict that's set up in that first issue of like you know him and Lois are going after the same Superman stories like all of that left a really big mark on me and it's something that like you know still to this day like I have the like Burn compilation DC put out a while ago that like was one of the first things in my office when we started my adventures with Superman because you know it influenced me so much and then I was like it's still really good.
As a Superman fan who was there at the time, I
Mm-hmm.
had Dan Jurgens on the show just this week.
Oh, that's
Uh,
go great.
so I think you know what I'm going to ask. How did you feel in 1992 when they killed him?
Devastated, man. It was so funny because I remember seeing it on TV as well. And yeah, again, I was young enough still, like I was a kid still, that I was like, if it's on TV, that means it's forever. Oh no, we've lost him forever. They did get me though with Reign of Superman. Like I was buying those. Like I was absolutely like, maybe he'll come back, but then
Who
also
did you think it was?
so okay. I really thought it was okay. Who did I think it was? Because I was like, definitely, I was like, it's not Superboy. Like, obviously, duh.
Obviously, yeah.
I kind of thought it was Cyborg Superman. I'm not gonna lie. I think that a lot of people thought it was
I
Cyborg
think that
Superman.
was, yeah, I think a lot of people did, to the point where I was like, no, everybody thinks it's him, so it's got to be the Eradicator.
Yeah, no, I was definitely a basic fan. I was like, it's definitely Cyborg Superman, 100%. It's got to be him.
It doesn't
Like
matter. We were all wrong.
we're all wrong. Every single one of us. It didn't matter, but we got into so many fights in the playground, just being like, it's not Steel. We know who that is. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, Steel from the start was explicitly stated as
Oh,
not being the real
yeah.
Superman.
Yeah, there was definitely I definitely had one friend who is just like, no, it's gonna be a twist. I'm like, like we're in elementary school. I'm like, it's not. But
They're
yeah,
not
no,
going there.
they're not going there. Yeah.
Yeah. What a time that was. I
What
wasn't
a time. Yeah.
I wasn't surprised at him coming back because
Hmm.
there was a news article here in the Philippines where they flat out said, "Don't worry, he's coming back." I'm like, all right, I'm not worried. But then they had the reign of the
Amazing.
Superman, and I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, which one? So I still fell for it.
Mm-hmm. Even though they're like, all right, Philippines, don't tell the rest of the world, but
Yeah.
he's coming back.
Yeah, but I still fell for it being one of the four. So,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. No, they did a good job setting up. It's like, who is it? And you're like, yeah. Why would they lie to us, comic book creators? Yeah,
uh, so I think we'll get back to Superman in a bit, but
yeah,
I
sounds
think
good.
when I first heard of your name, it was
Hmm.
as the head writer of She-Ra and the Princesses of Power. I'm a
Hmm.
huge fan of, well, I don't want to say I'm a huge fan. I'm a fan of
Hmm.
He-Man and the Masters of the Universe and that whole
Hmm.
thing back from the 80s. Um, I was a bigger fan before I watched them again. So I think you
Hmm.
know exactly what I mean when I
Hmm.
say
I mean, there's so much to love about that filmation stuff.
yeah.
But like, like you can't go back home again. Like it's like what was amazing to you as like a 10-year old or a 5-year-old, like as an adult, it's hard to get back into that love. It's hard to get that passion back. Yeah.
Yeah, so when people are like, okay, well, let's say the Masters of the Universe Revelation, they're like, oh, well, this
Hmm.
doesn't make me feel the way it did when I was 10. I'm like, because you were 10.
Yeah, exactly. Like nothing I do makes me feel the way I was when I was 10 because, I'm not 10 anymore. Like I find things I still love and I'm still passionate about. And I still have a lot of fun watching a lot of those old episodes and just being like, oh, cool. This is when like, they rotoscoped this thing. Like I recognize this shot. Like especially the backgrounds in He-Man are so beautiful, like absurdly for like the level of like animation they were able to do in America in the 80s. The background art is like next level. It's so good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyhow, I'm sorry, I interrupted your question.
No, it's great.
But the background art is good. Yeah.
It's great. I like these free-flowing discussions, but were you a fan of He-Man or She-Ra in the 80s?
So I was born in the 80s, so I was like I was just a little too young. Like I remember seeing He-Man and She-Ra toys everywhere, but I was just young enough that I hadn't seen the shows on TV. So I kind of didn't know who they were or what they were. I just knew that they looked cool. I was like, okay, barbarian guy and like Sailor Moon adjacent woman. Okay, these look cool. So it wasn't until much later that I sort of got into the sort of the Masters of the Universe stuff, and like I was reading I think some of the like DC comics that the comics DC were putting out for some of the Masters of the Universe stuff was like my first like sort of foray into it. And then Nate Stevenson gave me a call and was like, hey, I'm working on the show, we're going to do like a pitch room, do you want to be a part of it? I'm like, yeah. So like I watched a bunch of stuff and read a bunch of stuff. I'm like, oh, this is a cool property. I wish I had been more into it. I wish I had been into this as a kid because, like, this is exactly the thing that would have consumed my whole life. And like, I would have been a fan of. So coming on board She-Ra was really, really fun because, um, so much of what we were doing was being like, okay, well, this is like a character from the original show. What's the core of it? What's the heart of this character? And then how can we sort of reimagine them so it's like both more modern and we can have fun with them and do something maybe different than what they did back then. So we're like, okay, here's Mermista. She's still, the sea princess, but like, what if she is kind of like a shitty teen with like vocal fry who like sounds like maybe she dropped out of the mall, like, and is not impressed with anybody. And then like Mermista, like sort of reimagination was born. So I gave a very long explanation, but the short version is I hadn't been a fan when I started, but by the end, I was really into it. Like I have a bunch of cells that I bought at PowerCon that are hanging up behind me. Like I'm also hiding laundry, so they, but like, I think like the basic idea is very cool of like picking up a sword and like saying magic words and then you've transformed into a bigger buffer person who can like save the day is very appealing. And like then I don't think it's going to shock people that I also really love Shazam. it,
No,
I
really?
Really? Do you think? Yeah. So it's all the idea of magical transformation is very interesting to me. I love that stuff.
Yeah, we'll get to another woman who changes with magic lightning later.
Yes. Yeah.
What are the kind of changes that you guys like? Well, can you walk me through? You talked about making it
Hmm.
more modern and
Hmm.
more 2018 at the time.
Hmm.
Like, can you walk me through maybe a specific example of like how you decided to modify some of these
Yeah.
characters for the modern time?
Um, so one of the biggest things is like honestly, like sort of baked into what we did with the show and like was like very much like was something that Nate was so interested in. But like, in the Filmation She-Ra show, obviously She-Ra was kidnapped as a baby by the evil horde and then raised to be a bad guy. And then in the very first like episode slash like they made like a little like movie episode, He-Man comes in and he's like, "Oh, you're not an evil horde member, you're my sister and you're a princess and you're a hero and here's a sword." And then She-Ra's like, okay, Adora's like, "Okay, no, you're right, I am not evil, like I will fight them and join the rebellion." And then that's it. It's sort of from there on out she's just part of the rebellion fighting the evil horde, who theoretically were the people who raised her and like she's known her whole life. So when we went into this was like sort of Nate's pitch and what we worked on. We're like, let's take that seriously. Let's take she was raised in the horde. The people she loves are there. The people she cares about are there. Her best friend, the woman she loves most in the whole world, Katra, is there. So even when she realizes what she's doing is wrong and she joins the good guys and she becomes She-Ra, there's still a tie. There's such a tie and an emotional tie to the horde and the horde characters. And she's not fighting to like win or destroy them. She's fighting to like get them to see what they're doing is wrong and to join her. And honestly, out of that came the Adora Katra relationship, because we wanted to be like, well, here's who she left behind in the horde, and here's where she is now with the rebellion. And like both parts are equally as important to us in the show. And so that was like a really big thing that we're like, the idea of it was there in the old 80s show, but we're like, let's make that's such a good idea. That's such a good hook. Let's make that the meat of the show. Let's make the show about that conflict for her emotionally. And then that got us 52 seasons.
The,
Or 52
to
52 episodes.
episode
Sorry. Oh my God. I
52
was like
seasons.
50 seasons.
Wow.
Oh my God. No, I'd still be working on it. 52 episodes. Oh my God.
Did it was was the thing where Katra and Adora
Mhm.
were they was the romance always planned from day one?
Oh, absolutely. We wanted to sort of slow burn it and slow play it throughout, but like it was very much, they love. I think at the very beginning they loved each other, but they weren't able to like articulate it. Especially Katra. Katra is like a bundle of nerves, a bundle of like can't ever tell people how she's really feeling. She's just the prickliest cat ever. She's just a cat that's been doused with water and is like spitting at you all the time. But yeah, from the very beginning, we're like, they have a bond, and this bond is the thing that we want to pay off at the end. And honestly, like I think at the very start, like it was a little less, I think, the key idea in some of the episodes. Like we definitely knew that they're going to fall in love and that we're going to get to this end point. But I think when we finally got to that finale where they like declare their love for each other and that love helps free the horde and save the world, like I think we didn't realize like how powerful that was. I think it's hard when start a show and you're like, we're on episode 1 and we're going to have some fun and games with like the horde and they love each other, and then you get to episode 52 and you're like, okay, so the entire world is about to disintegrate, everything like that, like the horde is here, there's lasers everywhere. Like we always knew it'd end up with them being in love and telling each other they loved each other, but I don't think we understood like how big that would feel or how triumphant it would feel. And I don't think we quite knew how much it would resonate with so many people across the world. Like so many people have like gotten in touch with us and being like, oh my God, I saw it from the beginning and it means so much to me. It means so much to me as like a queer person or a gay person to see this on TV. So yeah, we started knowing, yeah, they're gonna be in love, and then we ended being like, yeah, the whole show was always about this.
It was always about them. I will
Yeah.
preface my next several questions with the fact that with a caveat that I am a straight man. So
Mm-hmm.
because but
Mm-hmm.
I just I believe so. I'm wondering. I was wondering
Mm-hmm.
exactly about that particular reaction because you
Mm-hmm.
get to any show these days, and then you get to people on Tumblr or whatever or Twitter,
Mm-hmm.
and then they're shipping everyone. Like,
I've seen so many shipping charts. Oh my God, for everything. Yeah.
right? I mean, you
Yeah.
watch Sandman and Morpheus is shipped with everyone on the show,
Yeah.
i-
Yeah. And
including
you're
his
like,
siblings.
yeah, yeah. And you're like, well, I don't know if him and death, but like, yeah, I've seen people love that. Yeah.
So people love that. Now,
Mm-hmm.
I feel that because of the
Mm-hmm.
lack of representation of queer representation,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people who want queer representation have to settle
Mm-hmm.
for their ships. So what
Oh
does it
yeah.
feel having pulled the actual trigger
Oh my
and
God, it
giving
feels
them
so
that?
good. It feels so good because, like, it's exactly what you said. I'm a bisexual woman. It's exactly what you said is like so much of fandom, especially in queer corners and especially in female corners, has been okay, well, women don't get to be the heroes. People of color get to be the heroes. Gay people don't get to be heroes. So, like, let's make up our own relationships. Let's make up our own ships. Let's make up our own thing over here that we'll love, but it'll never be canon. So, to be able to work on a show that did it, and especially that did it during, we started, making the show in 2016. Like it felt more important to us than ever before that we put something out there that is something that people of all different types can love, and that it's not something that didn't exclude anybody, and to actually be able to see that on TV, to see that on Netflix, that's huge. I mean, honestly, like it was a similar sort of rush, on Jurassic World Camp Cretaceous. We had planned out the Sammy and Yaz relationship too. And it was the same sort of thing of just, I want to make shows where everybody is represented, and where no matter no matter what your gender is, no matter what your identity is, no matter what your sexual orientation is, like you can point at someone and be like, that's me, I'm a hero. And that's really important for me. So to do that was incredible. Everybody should get a chance to be a hero.
So I can't help but think of the timelines here. You said 2016.
Mm-hmm.
2014, the end of 2014 was the end of The
Mm-hmm.
Legend of Korra. D Was
Mm-hmm.
that something where it felt like a door was being kicked down?
A
Or
little bit. I mean, it was honestly because when we were coming out too, like Adventure Time had just had Marceline and Bubblegum, like, kiss in one of their specials. Like we had seen, Steven Universe. Like in a lot of ways, it felt like Korra was sort of the beginning of it. Yeah, like doors getting kicked open and people being like, maybe we won't yank this out at the last possible minute and like leave everybody wanting. And I think more than anything, seeing how many fans and how many people were so excited about it and like were craving that, like, when She-Ra came out, when we got announced, I don't think anybody at DreamWorks really understood how big a deal it was going to be, but like the response was huge. We were trending on Twitter for like 3 days. Like they were getting like inundated with like emails of people asking about the show. And I think all of that joy and love outside and everybody in all of these shows that came before us absolutely helped us. No question about it. Like I don't think our show could have been as focused on love as it was without everybody in the industry and everybody watching being like, this is what we want. This is what we want to do.
absolutely. I think also as somebody, as I mentioned, I used to be a very big fan of Masters of the Universe before I watched it
Mm-hmm.
again. um, one of the things that I learned, like going, as I grew older, was the
Mm-hmm.
fact that it is kind of a big part, maybe not a big part, but it's a
Mm-hmm.
significant part of gay culture, the Masters of the
Oh,
Universe.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, yeah, it was, I mean, we had a lot of older people get in touch with us who are like, I've been, like Shira's been a little bit of a gay icon. Like we've been fans of Shira since, like it came out like in the 90s. We were like doing like drag with Shira. Like we love this. This is so happy. So no, it there was always that section and always that group. So to be able to like sort of again make something for everybody that doesn't exclude them, that doesn't exclude, you know, people who, you know, have taken it and made a part of their like, you know, their love and their passion and their culture. It's good. It's good. I mean, again, like my whole philosophy in animation especially, but like, you know, even in comics, is it should be for everybody. All of us should get a chance to take a sword and scream, you know, for the honor of Grayskull and transform, or scream Shazam and transform, or I'm gonna like probably like moon makeup power and transform. Like everybody should have a transformation sequence.
Get splashed by hot water and transform.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Yeah.
one of the other things that I kind of observed, I think, if I
Hmm.
compare your She-Ra to the original She-Ra,
Hmm.
was I don't I think that your She-Ra
Hmm.
absolutely feels like it had a team of women working on it, whereas the older
Hmm.
She-Ra kind of felt like it was what a
Hmm.
bunch of guys thought girls would want.
Hmm.
I don't actually
Hmm.
know how many women worked on it,
Yeah,
but
so I'm not sure in the writers' room. I mean, I think, you know, Michael Straczynski worked on it. But like it is been a sea change in animation for sure, that there's a lot more women coming in. There's a lot more people of color coming in. There's a lot more out and open gay people coming in. Which has been really nice. It's been nice to be a part of that and again make shows that are for everyone.
yeah. Because I mean, you guys have like all these different body types.
And it
Yeah,
was,
yeah,
yeah, it was really important for us, you know, to also make sure that like we were never falling into a mold where it's just like, here's one person, but we've just changed out their hair. Like each time we're like, okay, like who is there? Like who do we have like coming in? Like who could they be? And you know, one of the first conventions we did was New York Comic Con, and I remember we were in the audience watching Nate and the actors talk on stage, and the moderator, who was an African American woman, I believe, was like, is so great because, you know, I see Mermista, I'm like, I can cosplay her. She's me. Like I see Bo, and I'm like, ah, that's my brother. Like, and yeah, that was the goal, is for everybody to
awesome.
be so excited. Yes.
That's awesome. It was such a great show.
Oh,
It's such a
thank
great
you.
show. Let's move
Hmm.
on to another woman who uses magic lightning to transform.
Let's
You are
do it.
writing the new Champion of Shazam,
Hmm.
featuring Mary, not Marvel,
Not Marvel, Mary Brumfield.
Mary Bromfield, and it is drawn by the great Evan Doc Shanner.
Yes.
How did you get involved with this project?
So I had for a little while now, I had written a couple of things for DC, like basically short stories for them. Like I had pitched and written the Teen Lantern and Mogo short story in the Green Lantern Future State comic. I had written a Wonder Woman Black and Gold short story that came out in that anthology. And
I
then the
remember that Teen Lantern Mogo story. That
Oh,
was pretty cool.
I love it so much. They were like, we need something for Green Lantern. And I mean, I sent them 2 ideas, but like I was definitely like, Mogo is one of my faves of all time. I love him so much. So it was a real treat to get to pitch them that and write that. But yeah, so basically off of those two things, Brittany Holzer, the editor over at DC who had edited Black and Gold, got in contact with me and was like, hey, we're thinking of doing something with you know, are you familiar with like Shazam and Mary Marvel? And then she, I think, had to hold the like phone away from her ear as I screamed. Because I love the Shazam family. The old Captain Marvel, Mary Marvel, you know, Marvel Jr., all of that stuff. I'm a huge fan of Otto Binder, who is one of the original writers. And so I was so excited. I was like, yeah, what are you doing with her? I'll do anything. What's she up to?
See, that's why you're also a Superman fan because of Otto Binder.
It is 100%. I absolutely like. I have a bunch of like Kurt Swan like art too. Like it's just like it's all of that together. So yeah, so from that first conversation, Brittany said that they were looking to do like maybe a 4-issue miniseries. Did I have any ideas? So then I pitched her what has now become a new champion of Shazam. And then when we were looking for an artist, there's like a couple of names floating around, and this is when I was like halfway through writing it. And they were trying to find artists for the covers first because those get solicited first. And so Brittany had reached out to Doc, and then she called me up. She's like, hey, so like I reached out to Doc Shaner to see if he'd be interested in cover. And he said he'd be interested in drawing the whole series. Would that be cool with you? And then once again, I'm sure she had to like throw the phone away because I like screamed as loud as I could because I was a big fan of his artwork. Like I'd seen his like, Shazam family art like on his Twitter, on his Patreon. Like I loved all of the art he was doing with DC. So I was like so excited and so happy to have him on, not just because he's an amazing artist, which he is. He's incredible. Like just such a great storyteller, visual storyteller, and such a good draftsman. But also like he's just as excited for Mary as I am and Shazam as I am. So, it was the first, we were talking to each other on Twitter first, on like Twitter DMs first when his like name first floated. And I was like, I love Otto Biner. He's like, I love Supergirl. I'm like, I love Supergirl. I love Superman. Like it was very much just like shouting at each other things that we liked. So it was great.
Anyone who loves Golden Age Captain Marvel loves Silver Age Superman because they're
Yeah.
essentially the same thing.
Yes, yes. So much so that there was a lawsuit. So, but
But
yeah.
but yeah, like when I think of maybe a hand in glove fit for
Mm.
creators and
Hmm.
characters, the first thing that always comes to mind for me is Doc Shanner in the Shazam family.
Yeah.
He's so perfect for it. But
So
uh
good.
so obviously this is, when people say Shazam, a lot of people think Billy Batson. So have you had to
Hmm.
deal with any of that kind of reaction?
Well, yeah, a little bit because I think so where we're picking up is right at the end of Teen Titans Academy and Shazam to Hell and Back, which was a mini series that Tim Sheridan did. So there was a lot of people being like, wait, why isn't Billy here? And it was like, well, Billy's been trapped in the Rock of Eternity in the end of those comics. So what we were trying to do is put a real spotlight on Mary, and put a real spotlight on her sort of outside of Billy being Shazam, and sort of letting her have the mantle and like be the main one for a while. So I think it's sort of the reaction you always get when like people, like every comics fan like fades in and out of like their favorite series or what's going on. Like no one as of maybe comic book journalists know what's happening in every single book. So we had a lot of people being like, wait, where's Billy? We're like, okay, so we're gonna put in the issue like editor's notes, see this issue. And like I'd love to like, I've been directing people. I'm like, you should absolutely read Tim's 4-issue mini with like Helen back. You should read Teen Titans Academy because like it explains sort of like the end of that. So yeah, we've definitely had some questions. But I think what was been so incredible about this, and I saw it when we did this sort of Ask Me Anything on Reddit, and I've seen it on online and on Twitter, is that there's so many more people being like, oh my God, I've desperately wanted to see Mary. Oh my God, I'm desperate. Hoppy's here. Oh my God, I want more Hoppy. Like so many people have been waiting for so long to see Mary sort of solo again, or Mary sort of like embracing the power and being part of the family and having a bunch of these sort of like old golden age Shazam stuff come in. And so they were just really excited to see like we've got these 4 issues to be like, here's the Mary story, here's Hoppy, there's going to be a couple of other characters I think coming in that people are going to be excited to see. But yeah, so I think the people who are confused about Billy highly recommend Tim's work. It's really great. But the people who have overwhelmingly come in and being like, I'm so excited about Mary, I'm so happy that she's here, like thank you, I see it all and it warms my heart.
Doc has said that the only way he'd come back to Shazam was if it was Mary.
Yeah, which like has really lucked out for me because I was like, great, yeah, come onto my book please.
And I think it's perfect because
Mm-hmm.
I think every time we have used Billy,
Mm-hmm.
inevitably it becomes this thing where he's compared to Superman.
Yeah,
And
I can
yeah,
see that, I can see that. Oh, so go for it.
yeah. So like using another member of the Marvel of the
Yeah.
Shazam family, of the Shazam family
Mm-hmm.
is actually genius, and it's genius that it's Mary because like
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people are talk about how she's a sidekick, and I'm like, she's not a sidekick. She has the exact same powers, and she's his
Mm-hmm.
twin sister.
Yeah. So like in current continuity, like they're all foster siblings, but like yeah, it's the same power. It's the same things. She's doing the same exact things. So which is why like she's literally the new champion of Shazam. She's the new Shazam. I mean, I will say, I do love Billy, and I love the family. Like I think as more issues come out, everybody's gonna see, especially Darla, the family is still very much part of the comic and very much part of what's happening in Mary's life. And I personally would love to be able to like, write the Shazamily with Billy in it, like sometime in the future too. Like I like him a lot too. But yeah, Mary has a real special place in my heart. So it's been just a dream to write these 4 issues, and then like an even better dream when I get like emails of like just pages of beautiful Doc Shaner art where he's like, "Does this look good?" I'm like, "This looks amazing. Yes, it looks great. You did a great job." Yeah.
You talk about setting it in college, setting in
Mm-hmm.
college, both in Philly and in New York. What's
Mm-hmm.
up?
Mm-hmm.
Why the impetus for that? Because it does age Mary up from what we
Mm-hmm.
are used to.
Yeah. So, with Mary, for a while, they hadn't given her like age, but like for a while, I think since the sort of the Jeff Johns bringing them back in, I can't even remember when his comic first came out. I think it was New 52.
Yeah,
Yeah,
2011, something like that.
2011. Yeah. That Mary has been sort of treated like the older sister since then, where she is kind of always drawn a little older than the other kids. She's always been placed since then as sort of the responsible one. So for me, it kind of made sense to like just make that official and say like, yeah, she is older than them. And I think the other thing that gave me was the freedom to really dive into the theme of identity, and who you are. Because sort of that age, like 18, going to college, striking out on your own, that's huge. Like who you are as a person is like the biggest question on your mind when you're that age. And so being like, all right, so she is going to, she wants to reinvent herself. She wants to figure out who she is away from this whole family, away from all of the stuff that's been happening. And then she's going to get dragged back into it. Like felt like a really rich space to put her in. And it also, let me sort of have a lot of fun with sort of big thematic questions, which you guys are going to see as the issues goes on, of not just identity, but what makes a hero? Like, is it the powers? Is it the ability? Is it the heart? Like, Mary has the powers and her family does not. Is that the only reason why she's a hero, or are there other things that are at play? So sort of all of that was, I started with these themes and these ideas, and then it just felt right to just say, yeah, Mary's the oldest. She's starting college. She's the one most invested in figuring out who she is. And now she's got this mantle on her that has so much, so much emotional weight.
How does it feel being able to come up with a modern take on Hoppy the Marvel Bunny?
I love Hoppy. So fun. I was, when there was never a version of the pitch that did not have Hoppy in it, because I love Hoppy. And I think it's a crime and a tragedy that Hoppy has not been in the DC universe like ever,
For a
like
long
for
time.
a long time. Like I think we saw like a version of like unnamed Hoppy in like a back issue of like one of the Jeff Johns stories. But yeah, like it was always part of the pitch that's like, and Hoppy's going to be here and is going to be a sidekick, but like is still a bunny, so still very much has a bunny's priorities and not necessarily priorities that match with Mary's. And then I think, honestly, one of the first pages I saw, because we have a box folder that we were sharing art, and as I was like finishing up the final issue and Doc was putting in his inks, was that scene in that first issue of Mary and Hoppy getting into the argument in the middle of freshman orientation. And like I was like, as funny as I thought Hoppy was, like it's slam dunk, 100% more funny, like 100% funnier with like Doc's little like drawing him with his little paws up as he's cheering or his little ears down. Like, just love Hoppy to death.
I get to that panel and
Mm-hmm.
I get to that panel where she's talking to him and everybody's looking at her and I just start laughing. What do you mean only I can hear you?
like expressions too of like Hoppy's ears down and like her horrified face as she's like looking around. It's like, oh, it's such a good page.
So how did you feel when you got the first
Mhm.
splash page of her turning into
It
Shazam Mary?
it was incredible. I mean, again, like I can't say enough about Doc's artwork, but like especially with like the lightning around her, like, and her new costume, like it was just like, this is so cool. Like, this is exactly the type of hero I was into as a kid, or exactly the type of hero that like I draw myself as like as a child, or like draw into like the margins of my notebooks. Like she's cool, she's funny, she's, graceful and powerful. She's got literal lightning striking things around her. Like it was really cool. And outside of the two sort of like short stories, this is my first sort of bigger comic story. So to see that splash page, it really like brought it home of just like, man, we're making something really special here. I get to be a part of something that's really, really cool. And like, I hope like helps define Mary in the DC universe for both the DC side and for fans.
You get to spearhead what by default might end up being the definitive Mary Marvel story.
Maybe. Yeah, hopefully we'll see if people keep enjoying the issues as they come out. But yeah, I would, it's a big deal. It's a big privilege and a big responsibility for sure. Yeah.
Are there any higher up edicts to make it look like it ties into the movies or not at all?
Not really. I mean, we had originally gotten pushed a little bit, both because there is some pushing of the sort of ends of some of the Teen Titans Academy stuff that was setting it up, and because there was like the idea of maybe it'll come out at the same time as the movie, but like honestly, and Doc said this before too in interviews, like I was surprised. Like I'm so used to working in IP in like animation, and especially like when I was working on Jurassic World Camp Cretaceous, which is like so tied into that movie universe. Like I thought there'd be more pushback, but no, they were absolutely like, redesign the costume as you want, like adjust her powers, bring in whoever you want. Like this is its own story, its own little world here. Like, we also hope people enjoy the Shazam movie, but like, yeah, there was absolutely no pressure and no edicts at all. Like they just wanted to see what my story was and what Doc drew basically.
What villains can we expect in the next three issues? I know you're creating your own. You're also bringing
Mm-hmm.
in some established ones. Who can we expect?
Mm-hmm. So I think at the end of the first issue, I think you saw like three people with like glowing chests in the shadows. They're going to be coming in. I've taken some characters from, I think, as people saw with Disaster Master,
Yeah.
there's about three or four characters I've taken directly from the old Fawcett comics and dropped them in here and sort of reimagined them. And then issue 3 has a brand new villain coming in that sort of I made up, but like sort of fits into sort of the villainous group. So I don't want to say who they are because I want you to discover it as you pick up the comic. But I'll say issue 3, especially issue 2, is going to have a reimagining of an old Mary Marvel specific villain from her comic. Issue 3 has one of my favorite Fawcett characters, as well as a brand new villain for Mary to face off at. And then issue 4 is kind of a big epic finale with a couple of more Fawcett characters coming in, and another sort of big villain I'm sort of reimagining. So I hope that gets everyone excited for them.
Did you end up doing a binge on the old Fawcett ones just to refresh your memory?
Oh, absolutely.
Are they not the best?
They're so good. The thing that like they're so funny still.
Yeah.
I saw like it had trended for a while like on Twitter. Like people found that panel where it was just like, here's Taki Tani. He's not in this issue, but we thought we'd like to see him. And it's still really funny. Like the jokes are really sharp. The drawing is beautiful. It's that is the one place you can go home again. Those comics still rock.
I agree. They've aged really well. One thing I like about them is she's got all of these really, really awesome powers. And sometimes the case is
Yes.
like, who took the pie?
Yes. And it's like, it's so funny. I love Hoppy, obviously. Like, I love the like mishmash of like, here's these crazy powers, but yeah, it's who took the pie. Like, we're all gonna go to Hollywood. Like, I love the addition of Uncle Marvel when he's coming in
Yes.
and like lying. He's like, I've also got the power,
Like
Shazam, and then just
Shazam.
like running off and getting changed and then running back in. Like, there's so much fun. There's those comics are so funny and they're so much fun to read. Like, it to me, it feels like a classic, everything a comic should be, you know?
Yeah. I love how when they did the Marvel family stuff and then
Mm-hmm.
like they draw them in their very specific models. So it's
Yeah.
like Captain Marvel would have those two dots for eyes, and meanwhile,
Mm-hmm.
Captain Marvel Jr. looks like super realistic.
Yeah. And they're all like just putting them next to each other. They're like, it's fine, it's fine.
It's fine. Nothing to see here, folks.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so that is awesome. I think my next question is superficially Adora, Shira,
Mm-hmm.
and Mary are similar characters superficially.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever find the voice of one bleeding into the other, or
Oh, that's a great question. You know, I don't, because to me, even though they've got a similar like sort of gimmick, who they are fundamentally is pretty different. Like,
yeah,
there is a little bit in common of just like, I write both and I have a similar sense of humor, so some of the jokes might be a little similar, but to me, Adora was somebody who was sort of defined by what she was trying to be, and like defined by her sort of like her anxieties and her grief of like losing her friends in the horde and wanting them to like understand where she's coming from. Like, her arc and who she was really determined by this like sort of like white knight hero complex. Like, Adora wanted to save the world at the expense of herself. Mary has a lot more ego than that. Mary will save the world, but I think the way I write Mary and the way I come at Mary is a lot more from a space of somebody who has confidence, somebody who knows that they are smart and they want to do something with that. It's why she wanted to go to college. It's why when she actually gets the mantle of Shazam, and you'll see sort of issue 2 onwards, like, she is taking it seriously. But yeah, she doesn't have the same drive to prove herself the way Adora was constantly trying to prove herself to every single person she met. I mean, I also think it's helped that, Mary was raised, or Mary at least was adopted by, fostered by the Vasquezes, who are this incredibly loving, couple. And she's got the Shazam family around her. She's got Pedro and Eugene and Darla and Freddie and Billy, and they are such a loving unit. And Adora was raised by Shadow Weaver, who I would not wish on my worst enemy. So I think just that alone, like, Mary came from a place of love. So who she is this really confident person who's, maybe even if she's getting beat down by life a little bit, she's still determined in going forward. Whereas, yeah, Adora was raised in a world where like the very sand shifted underneath her feet, and she's desperately trying to figure out where she's going.
I don't know how much you can tell us about my adventures with Superman, but what can you tell us about my adventures with Superman?
So I've said this before, but My Adventures with Superman is definitely still coming out. It's going to be coming out next year, 2023, on both Cartoon Network and HBO Max / whatever they'll be calling the app by that point. But it's definitely still coming out in both of those. And it's a little bit, I can say what we've sort of said before, which is that this is Clark, Lois, and Jimmy in their very early 20s meeting at the Daily Planet as interns. That our series doesn't start with him as, doesn't start with them as the fully realized people they are yet. It's sort of a story about growth. I can also say that it's very much a story influenced by the 78 Margot Kidder, Christopher Reeve Superman movie, which is like, I love so much. And specifically their dynamic, Lois and Clark's
Yeah.
dynamic, is so good. and so fun. And it's absolutely something that we wanted to replicate for our show, of just like Lois is this sort of fast talking wit who's like kind of getting them into trouble, and a little bit like the Fleischer Lois too, like jumping into like the backs of like gangsters' vans to like get her story. But like there's such love and respect between her and Clark. Like Clark is the same wonderful, mild-mannered, is sort of now intern, but sort of person he always was, who like finds freedom in becoming Superman. And so, when we originally pitched this, I think we used the words, it's a rom-com with punching, because to us, the Lois and Superman relationship is everything. It's the basis of our show. We're still going to have a lot of fun. Like there's a lot of really fun villains that we're pulling in from all over the DC universe. There's a lot of fun villains we're pulling in from, Superman the animated series, from the Superman comics. And there's going to be a lot of action. Like, oh my God, it is absolutely action packed. There's a lot of really fun fight scenes. But yeah, at the heart of it, it's about the relationship of, these three friends, Lois, Jimmy, and Clark, and very much about the love, and Clark and Lois falling in love and carving out their identities as they go. So that was sort of the abstract, high-handed way to be like, yeah, it's going to be a show about relationships. It's going to be a show about love. It's going to be a show about fighting bad guys and flying around in cool ass capes. It's going to be Superman.
Superman and Lois. I don't think there is a couple in fiction that where both people could headline their own shows.
Yeah, right.
Also, I'm really glad you mentioned the Fleischer Lois, because as amazing as that Fleischer Lois was, she has the survival instincts of a baby.
Yes. I recently got, somebody gave to me as a present the old Fleischer Studio Cartoons DVD, and so I was rewatching them, and yeah, I love her so much. But like she's absolute, like Lois, the fun part about Lois Lane is that she acts like she is Superman. She like already thinks she's invincible. So yeah, in those cartoons, like there's one where like she's on a train and gangsters are firing at her, and like literally she shrugs and picks up a Tommy gun and starts firing back. And that is a dynamic we play with a little bit, where it's like Lois is like, I'll live forever, and like Clark is like, well, Lois, maybe you're not totally bulletproof. Maybe we need to think things through a little bit. No, you're jumping into a train again. Okay.
That's crazy, because like you see a lot of that stuff now where like where the female co-star is really has like a lot of gumption and like gets into the fights and gets really reckless.
Yeah,
Lois was doing that in 1940.
Yeah, Lois is the template for like everyone. No, it's so she's gonna get her story no matter what. So yeah, so it was like the Fleischer cartoons were a huge influence on us. Yeah, 78 Superman, the motion picture, huge influence on us. Like I love that movie so much. Like we made all of the writers and all of the directors and all of the artists watch it with us. And then we were all kids of the 90s, so again, like the Burn stuff where Mom, Pa Kent are there, and you've got sort of the what is it, all of the stuff that I think, so go for it.
The Bruce Timm stuff.
Yeah, the Bruce Timm stuff, the animated series, which I also rewatched a lot of. Like it's all, for us, that was all sort of like what we grew up with and what we love most. So again, like Shira, trying to put sort of our own spin on it, trying to modernize it a little bit, make it something that kids nowadays will really, really enjoy, and teenagers nowadays. I mean, honestly, we're for a slightly older audience, but all of it is coming from a place of love.
Would you say you're for a slightly older audience, so not just for kids? So
not just for kids, yeah.
More YA, would you say?
Yeah, I'd say so. Like our sort of intended audience is, I mean, honestly, we our goal is, kids will watch it, but like they're, 40-year-old parents, 30-year-old parents, 50-year-old like grandmas like watching it too, because they're like, oh, I need to see like how this relationship plays out. Like, oh, I need to know what happens next with like these characters. Like the goal is for this to be a show where every single member of the family sits down and is like, I need to see what happens next to Lois and Clark. I need to see what happens next to Jimmy.
It's ironic that you're aiming at an more general, maybe skewing older audience by making the characters younger.
Yeah, well, because everybody loves, I mean, honestly, everybody loves a coming of age story. Like
Yes.
there's so much hope for the future. There's so much potential. It's fun to start at the beginning, you know? So yeah, no, and then a lot of it too is it's just something we haven't seen before. Is also a lot of it, which is like, a lot of series start with, he's already Superman, or like, like the new live action Superman and Lois show, which is fantastic, is like they've already got kids. So it felt really fun for us to carve out a space it's where we can be like, well, this is his starting point. This is Superman year one, essentially. This is where they are, and then everybody can sort of grow with them.
In this universe, was he ever Superboy?
So I can't say any specifics about what is happening in the show. Like I said, I can be a little, talk about
Vague.
the
Okay.
themes. It could be a little vague. I say if you're interested in answering that question in 2023 on Cartoon Network and HBO Max / whatever they call that app, it will be coming out. Stay tuned.
How does 2022 Josie Campbell feel about the current state of animation, the current state of streaming, and the way it's
Mm.
playing out today?
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not. I don't think it's going to shock anybody who's been paying attention that like it's been a little depressing to see so many people's hard work taken off of apps for like and not being told. Like there's been a lot of, everybody in the animation industry is kind of feeling it a little bit because it was so sudden. But I think the thing is that despite what decisions have been made, despite the fact that yeah, we've lost some really great shows and some really great content because of, mergers, because of new executive decisions, because of various things, not just at Warner Brothers, but other companies. I still am really hopeful about animation, honestly. Like, I've been working in animation for a while, almost a decade, and every year more people come in. Every year the Animation Guild, our union, grows bigger. Every year there's more animated series than the year before, and they're getting more ambitious, they're getting cool. Like it's to be a kid now, to be a young adult now who loves animation, and to be able to like watch Castlevania, or and then go watch like Teen Titans Go with like your little kid, your little like sibling, and then to like watch anime coming out and being like distributed on Hulu, which also would have blown my mind as a child because I had to like go find where Sailor Moon was airing at like 5 a.m. on ABC. Like there's so much animation and there's such clear love for animation that people have been doom saying, I don't think we're going away. I think it's very clear, and especially with people's reaction to like everything that's been happening with things being taken off of HBO Max or things being taken off of Netflix. People love animation. Animation has a lot of fans, not just here, but globally. The top shows on Netflix are often animated. It's
Arcane.
Arcane, which is so good. Jurassic World was on there for a while. Like Coco Melon will reign supreme until we die. Like animation is here to stay. Animation is here to grow. We are going through a rough patch for sure, with the fact that a lot of these mergers means that decisions are being made way above our pay grade.
By people
But
who don't care about animation.
by people, or people who don't know about animation, people who
Yeah.
come from, live action worlds, people who come from tech worlds, people who come from reality worlds. But like people are so excited about animated shows. I mean, the news today was that like Apple, Hulu, and Netflix are in a bidding war already over Cape Crusader. Like it's a bump in the road. We're going to come out stronger, I think, on the other side. And I think people are going to just continue to be vocal about their love for animation, which is great. I love that.
And my very last question is the exact same question, except replace animation with comics.
So I feel like comics, people have been like doom saying comics since I was a kid, being like, well, like which is like the 90s, which was like a great time for like selling comics.
Comics have ended a billion times at this point.
And so again, when I was in college, because I was a theater major for a while, I remember one of our teachers gave us a translation of an ancient Greek philosopher whose quote was basically, well, the theater is dead now. And we're and I feel like there's a very similar vibe with comics where people are like, well, but like comics are selling better than they've ever had before. Like, Scholastic is a mega like company based off of graphic novels. Like kids comic sales are through the roof, like superhero sales are, not usually teen and up, but like I think there's a lot of excitement for superheroes, like the She-Hulk show came out and like, people are going out in droves to buy Dan Slott's like, She-Hulk collection, which I love, by the way. I was
It's
buying it in college.
perfect. Like the show is perfect. It's like Byrne and Slott's run put together.
Yes, it's so fun. Like again, I think comics is so fun. There's so much stuff to still be done in comics. Like it's I think that comics is just again another place where like things are really strong. And comics and animation have a lot in common, and like a lot of people go back and forth between the two of them. Like they're very linked industries. Like a lot of my comics friends have gone into animation and vice versa. Like, one of my co-EPs on Superman is Jake Wyatt, who drew on some of the Spider-Verse stuff. So it's all very interconnected, and it's all, I think, stuff that people nowadays have more of an appetite for than ever before. Comic sales are doing well, there will always be the dips. It's publishing, there'll always be ebbs and flows. But yeah, people, I think we've proven now that people really love superheroes. People really love
Yes.
comics. So like, our job is to keep making it for them.
Thank you so much, Josie Campbell. This was amazing. I had a fun time.
Yes, this was so fun. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you.